Hi, everyone. I'm going to introduce a concept to you. And if you've never heard this concept, I'm really sort of honored to be presenting it because it is a biggie. It's an important one. And the concept will go a little bit deeper into why we ever needed mitzvot in the first place. Okay, what the point? A mitzvah is a commandment. And I want to stress over here that one of the great differences between Judaism and Christianity is how important is deed versus belief or thought. So is believing enough, or is the practice an integral part of the relationship with us and God? And Judaism believes very firmly that paying lip service or even paying heart service to a deity or to a religion or to a belief is not where it's at. It's not just about believing, but it's about action. We're a people of action. Why is that? So I'm going to explain to you a concept called the purple jacket people. When I was a rabbi at UCLA, I got a lot of questions like you would expect to get on a college campus. And the questions involve, why does God care about this? What's the relevance of Shabbat? Why Israel? Why Torah? And I just figured that there's got to be one answer to answer every question. Why? Because for simplicity's sake, and even in science, we're always looking for that theory of everything that will explain everything. Instead of a bunch of little theories. And I believe that in Judaism, there should be the same kind of concept, like that one killer idea that through that idea you could understand much, if not all, the basics of Judaism. And I came up with a concept called the purple jacket people. And I'm going to explain to you what that is, but I will tell you, purple jacket people was a way of understanding and defining what Jewish people are doing in the world. Eventually, that concept of purple jacket people became pretty famous. It ended up in Wikipedia as a way of understanding what Jewish people are doing in the world. People made purple jacket people clubs. They bought purple jackets. It became a song. At least I found at least one song on YouTube dedicated to purple jacket people. So it's sort of cool to have started an idea that grew legs and today is actually taught in many colleges. So you're now going to get it from the source. The concept of the purple jacket people begins with a story that's, about 8-10 minutes long. And the rest of the talk delves into the implication of the story, which at its heart tries to understand mitzvot. Okay? So here's the story. It goes like this. There was once a king who was a good guy. He wasn't a tyrant, he was a good guy. And he very much wanted to build a kingdom of goodness. People should be as righteous as they can be. They should be thoughtful. They should be generous. They should be kind. However, unfortunately for him, the kingdom that he took over was one of tremendous moral decay. People robbed and they killed and they shot and they raped and they swindled, and it was just the kind of kingdom that looked like Sodom, like the ancient Sodom, very wicked. And this bothered the king. Every day he'd flip open the newspaper and he'd read another murder, another kidnapping, and he tried to the best of his ability to get people to start living on the straight and narrow. Like, what can I do to get people to be good? And he offered incentives for good behavior in his kingdom. He threatened punishments for wicked behavior. He did whatever he could. Alas, nobody took him seriously. And then one day, the king, in a fit of frustration, he said, you know what? Enough is enough. If you guys in the kingdom, if my subjects don't act with kindness and generosity and honesty, I'm going to leave. I don't need to be your king. I mean, this king, by the way, was independently wealthy. He did not need the kingdom. And he said, you know what? I'm just going to leave if you guys don't behave. I'm going to leave. I'll abdicate my throne. And the people in the kingdom they heard this and they laughed. They said, no king in his right mind ever just like stepped down voluntarily from being king. It makes no sense. And so the king, out of frustration, waited long enough, and one day they knock on the king's door to serve him breakfast. No one answers, or break down the door. The king is gone. He's not in his bedroom. They go to his wardrobe, empty. They go to the treasure house, empty, because it was mostly the king's own personal wealth. And within a few minutes, word got out. The king had disappeared. The king had left the kingdom. What do you think happened to a kingdom without a king? Just what you would expect. Implosion, anarchy, destruction. Everyone's at each other's throats. Breaking windows, going into storefronts, stealing Nikes, stealing television sets, grabbing what you can from your neighbor. Without the rule of law, says the Talmud, each person would swallow his neighbor alive. And that's what happened. And within a day or two or three, this kingdom had just self-destructed. Meanwhile, the king who left, because he had enough of their wickedness, he had a plan. He had an idea. And this is his idea. He took all of his money, all of his wealth, and he went to an uncultivated piece of land, a huge piece of land. And he hired contractors and he began to build. And he built huge highways, 16 lanes. There should never be a traffic jam. Then he built huge houses, each house 8 bedrooms, 10 bathrooms, each one sitting on an acre of property. Fantastic. Then he built parks for the children, beautiful libraries and malls and schools. He just built a gorgeous, gorgeous city, a gorgeous kingdom. And when he had finished, he then put ads in all of the major newspapers around the world. Whoever would like to join me in my kingdom, bevakasha, please join. I'd be honored. You'll find the amenities are first rate. The houses are a bargain. It's all brand spanking new with the latest technology. But on one condition will I allow you to buy a house in my kingdom. You've got to agree to be good. You've got to agree to be moral and decent. I don't want the killing. I don't want the stealing. I don't want the swindling. If you could sign on the dotted line that you're going to be a moral, upstanding citizen, please join. Well, when people read this in the ads in their local newspaper, they thought, wow, that's really strange. I never heard of a moral clause to buying real estate. But some people were curious. And they checked out this kingdom, and what they saw, wow, look at these houses. So beautiful, so modern, so up to date, so fashionable. Look at the stores. Look at the parks for the children. Wow, this is such a great place, like the Emerald City. We want to move here. And hey, I could sign on the dotted line that I'm not going to kill or steal. I'm a good guy. I'm going to buy. I'm going to do it. And people began buying houses, signed on the dotted line. And the more people that bought, the more people that bought. And soon it became a stampede of people trying to grab houses in this new kingdom. And soon every house was spoken for. There was even a waiting list. And the king was really happy because he began to sit down for breakfast in his new palace, in his new kingdom. And he'd flip open the newspaper, and you know what he would read? He would read good news. He would read fireman rescues kitty from tree, hands to the old lady, and she's there and he's there in the picture. That's the front page news. That's the news. The news is good news. You know, Boy Scout walks old lady across the street. Wow, that's the headlines. Man returns pocketbook to old lady who always ends up in the news. Right? This is just always good news all the time. This is like Pleasantville, if you get the reference. It's just a great place to live. And the king, he was so happy by what he had built. One day, king is sitting down to breakfast, flips open the newspaper, and they're blaring from the headlines, woman caught shoplifting. Now, in the old kingdom, if someone was caught shoplifting, would that make it in the newspaper? Forget about it. You know, you had murders that ended up on page 16. A shoplifting, you know, that's not going to make it. But in this kingdom, that was a breach. That was major. That was headline news. 2 days later, man caught pickpocketing. A week later, armed robbery at the 7-Eleven. And each day, the news got more and more dreadful. And because of this news, because of what was going on, people were scared. What's going to be with this kingdom? Each day, it was spiraling a little bit more out of control. And the king himself, he would read the newspaper and he'd read about this, and he's like, oh no, is this kingdom going to be like my old kingdom? I don't have the energy to leave this and build a third one. What's going on here? They signed on the dotted line. Why is this happening? And he calls in his trusted advisor, his best friend, and he says, I need to have a word with you. You've got to help me understand. You've got to help me fix. Why is this kingdom doomed to failure? Is that who we are as people? Are we doomed to cater to our worst instincts? Is that what mankind is? I don't get it. And the friend said, if I could be honest with you, if I could be frank with you, I will tell you what I think the issue is. Here's the issue. You, he says to the king, you are a good man. That's the issue. You're a good king. You're a good friend. You're a good father. You're a good husband. You're good. You're goodness. And really, you want everyone in the kingdom to be like you. That's really what you want. You want them to be like you. But they never see you. They never see you. You're in your palace, on a hill, behind a moat and a drawbridge with alligators. And they're over there as citizens, as civilians in your kingdom. And to them, the concepts of be good, be amazing, be moral, to them, it's just an idea. And, you know, we have a lot of ideas, and some that we do well and some that we slip and fall and we regress. Says the friend, if you want people to be like you, they need to see living and breathing role models of what it means to live the kind of life that you hold so dear. King says, how do I do that? So the advisor says, here's my advice. Pick a group of people and let them be your ambassadors. Let them live lives that will represent you to the rest of the kingdom. Put on them purple jackets. So wherever they go, people will say, oh, purple jacket people here. These guys are the ambassadors. They represent the king. You can give them extra nuanced laws to make sure that they stay on the straight and narrow, that they're able to teach the rest of the citizens how to be good people. The king liked that idea. And he chose a group of people and he put on them purple jackets and he scattered them throughout his kingdom. Do you think it helped? It sure did. From when the purple jacket people were spread out, the effect was almost immediate. A husband and wife are fighting. They don't know what to do. They're squabbling. They get into a lot of this stuff. They say, let's go next door. The purple jacket people, they seem to know how to keep a marriage together. Look at their character. Look at how they respect each other. Let's learn from them. In business, a purple jacket person you could trust on a handshake. If his word is his bond. Even in school, the kids who wore purple jackets, because the whole family had to. Even the kids did. The kid would come to school. All his friends knew he was the purple jacket person kid. He belonged to a purple jacket family. He was always asked to be the class monitor. He was always beaten up in the playground because nobody likes a goody-goody. But he was good. He was a good kid because the purple jacket people represented the king, and the world began to change. The kingdom began to change because of them. However, our story has somewhat of a bittersweet ending because the king began to hear rumors that even the purple jacket people had begun to slip and fall. Even the purple jacket people indulged in a little bit of thievery, a little bit of dishonesty, a little bit of immorality, a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And when the king heard about this, he was enraged. He called them all into his chamber. All my purple jacket people from throughout the kingdom, you're expected in my chamber at 9 o'clock in the morning. And they all came, the men and the women, they were all wearing their purple jackets, and they stood in front of his throne, and they were shaking and quaking. And he looks at them and he says, do you not understand the concept? Do you not realize that by wearing purple jackets, you represent me to all of my kingdom? And by being dishonest, by being immoral, by slipping, now instead of being the example like I needed you to be, you're becoming the excuse. Hey, if the purple jacket people who are supposed to be so amazing can slip and fall, then what do you want from the rest of us? Says the king, I'm not going to take away your purple jackets because everyone knows who you are at this point. It wouldn't help. But I promise you this. If you misrepresent me, I'm going to punish you, and I'm going to do so publicly so that everyone sees that I don't sanction your behavior when you misbehave. Who are the purple? That's the end of the story. Who are the purple jacket people in the story? The purple jacket people in the story. I once gave this talk in Colombia, and I said, who are the purple jacket people? One of them said, the policemen. I said, no, I'm a rabbi. This is a Jewish talk. Who are the purple jacket people? The Jews are, right? We are the purple jacket people. You see, in a perfect world, there would not have to be Jews. As a matter of fact, when God created the world, he didn't create it with Jews. Adam and Eve, Adam and Chava, were they Jewish? Nay. Noah, from the flood fame, was he Jewish? No. What about Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov? Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, were they Jewish? No, they weren't either. They were the forefathers of the Jews. We only became Jewish at Mount Sinai. When God gave us the Torah, we actually went through a legitimate conversion. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob were not Jewish. If they'd be Jewish, then all their kids would be Jewish. Then Yishmael would be Jewish. So all the heirs would really be Jews. And then Asaph would be Jewish, so all the Roman Christians would be Jewish. No, those were the forefathers and the foremothers of Judaism. In a perfect world, God did not need Jews. In a perfect world, God just wanted people to be good to each other, be kind to each other, have respect, have love, don't hurt each other, don't steal, don't kill. But what happened to the world? Well, we know, like it says in the Torah, and the world became rotten, the world became corrupt in front of God, and it was full of thievery. And ultimately, the Almighty said, okay, a world like this, a kingdom like this, I don't want to be the king of a kingdom like this. Along comes the flood, God leaves, let's rebuild. Starts again, new kingdom. Tower of Babel, right afterwards, let's rebel against God. Once again, iniquity and corruption. Let's scatter them and start over. Then the capitals of the free world, Sodom and Gomorrah. Tremendous, tremendous wickedness. Says the Almighty, I can't be the kingdom over these people. Let's start over. And eventually, God says, I need my purple jacket people. I need my people who are going to represent me to the rest of mankind. And so he chose us. And now comes the most important question in all of Judaism. Why? Why did he choose us? Is it because we're the smartest? Are we the smartest nation? No, we're not. The Asians probably are. We're probably number 2, according to the bell curve, but we're not the smartest. Are we the most athletic? This we all know the answer to. No, a vehement no, that's for sure not. From the 5'5" rabbi, right? So why did God choose us? I wanted to ask this group from Colombia, I said, how many of you are comfortable being called the chosen people? And not one kid, it was a Jewish class, not one kid raised his hand. Finally, one boy raised his hand and said, oh, you're comfortable being called the chosen people? He said, no, I just want to say, I think it's a racist Aryan idea, the chosen people. It's a racist idea. I said, oh, okay, listen, I asked, you answered. I respect that. Can I ask you a question, though? He said, sure. I said, were you ever bar mitzvah? Did you ever have a bar mitzvah? He said, sure. I said, how was it? Because it was great. How many people came? 300, 350. Oh, nice bar mitzvah. Expensive. Nice. What did you do at your bar mitzvah? He said, I did everything. We had a party. Got called up for the Torah. I said, great. What happened when you got called for the Torah? How did that sound? So this student jumps up and in front of my class, he goes, Baruch Hu et Hashem hamvarach, and everyone dutifully answers, Baruch Hashem hamvarach, lalam, and he says, Baruch et Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam. You guys know, Asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torah. So I said, great. Let me just translate what you said. So you said, blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who chose us from all the other nations. So you actually announced in front of 300 of your closest friends and relatives that you're a chosen people. He goes, it's not fair. I didn't know what I was saying. I said, so what did he just like announce whatever in front? You know, learn a translation. But it's a good question. Why did God choose us? You know, many years ago in England, there was what was called the anti-Semite poem. The anti-Semite poem, it's when a Gentile, an English noble person passed a Jew, he would have to recite the poem. And the poem was a very short poem. It went, how odd of God to choose the Jews. that was the whole poem. That was how odd of God, like you're gonna choose a purple jacket nation, why would you have chosen them? How odd of God to choose the Jews. So we're not gonna let that go because we're Jewish and we're fighters. So we made up a poem back. You wanna hear our poem back? Oh, we gotta hear the poem back. So Dave said, how odd of God to choose the Jews. And we would answer back, it's not so odd, the Jews chose God. Touché, said the Gentile. No, he never did. But it's true, we chose God. But since we're Jewish, we cannot just have one answer back. We have to have a second version because that's who we are. Ashkenaz, Sfard, Hasidic, right? So here's the second version. So some Jews responded with a second poem. It was a little bit longer. They would say, how odd of God to choose the Jews. We would say back, well, odder still are those who choose a Jewish God, yet spurn the Jews. Anyone get that? Odder still are those who choose a Jewish God, i.e. Jesus. Odder still are those who choose a Jewish God, yet spurn the Jews. You throw away the Jews, but you pick for yourselves a Jew as a God. You're weirder than us. Of course, it was so long that the Gentile was like halfway down the block. But they're like, odder still those who kol kach tov. We want the Gentiles to hear the punchline. Why did God choose us? And the answer, a very profound answer, God chose us because we were slaves. That's the correct answer to that incredibly important question. God chose us because we were slaves. God says, where is there a people that can be my purple jacket people? That will understand what it's like to lift up the downtrodden, take care of the needy, the orphan, the widow, the despondent, the discarded, the abused, and the ignored. Where is there a people who could relate to the mission statement of godliness? And God looks down and says, wow, look at this. An entire nation of men, women, and children. For centuries, they have been slaves. Not a few of them, not a portion of them, all of them. Not for a few years, for hundreds of years, an entire nation enslaved. And God says, if there's going to be one nation that could understand what it's like to take care of a widow, This nation's got so many widows, so many orphans. They've been so abused for centuries. They've been beaten to a pulp. They're going to know what it feels like, and they are the perfect people to announce there's a better way. So God whisks this band of slaves out of Egypt, and 50 days later, brings them to Mount Sinai. And in Mount Sinai, he gives us the 10 mission statements, which are mistakenly called the 10 commandments, but they're not really 10 commandments. They're mission statements that have commandments in them. They're actually 12 commandments within those 10 mission statements. But Aseret HaDvarim, they're called in Hebrew, not Aseret HaMitzvot. Aseret HaMitzvot would mean the 10 commandments, but they're called Aseret HaDvarim, the 10 statements, the mission statements. And then right after God gives these 10 mission statements, then right away in Parshas Mishpatim, he begins to give us the mitzvahs of the Torah. And you know what the very first mitzvah in the Torah is? What's the very first mitzvah? Put on tefillin, tzitzis, right? Shake a lulav and esrog. What's the first mitzvah? Listen carefully. The first mitzvah is how to treat a slave. Really? Yes, really. Because you've just been there. You've just done that. It's fresh in your mind. Now, you know what it's like? Go teach the world there's a better way. Then how to treat an orphan, how to treat a widow, how to treat those who are despondent and discarded and abused and ignored. As a matter of fact, if you would look at this parsha of this week, Parshas Kedoshim, I did this for my synagogue this week. I said, let's just read one page and translate. I said, you won't find a page like this in any other book in ancient history. Anyone who has any page like this just borrowed from us. And it's this one incredible page. Throughout the Torah, every page is incredible. But this page, it speaks right away. If you're a judge, don't skew your judgment. Not for a poor person out of mercy and not for a rich person because you have to give them honor. Don't hold back the wages of your worker over an evening. You're supposed to get paid that night. You run to the bank and you pay him that night. You don't make him wait till the next day. Don't go around Rachel Ba'amecha. Don't go around telling Lashon Hara. Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. Love your friend like you love yourself. All this is on this in a few lines, just a few lines, in one parsha, just one page. Blows up with purple jacketness. No one's got a line like that. No one's got a page like that. No. In the olden days, might makes right. To the victor go the spoils. The vanquished, they're no more than cattle to be used and abused and beaten and thrown into coliseums to be entertainment for the masses while they get ripped apart. No, life is holy. And that's what purple jacket people means. We have to remember that we're purple jacket people every single year. Because if we forget we're purple jacket people, then the whole reason that we exist disappears. So we have a holiday called Pesach. And on Pesach we eat matzah. And matzah is lechem oni. Lechem oni means the bread of affliction. The bread when you don't have bread for the next day and the next day and the next day. So you got to hold on to the same bread and it gets crackery and hard and tasteless. And we eat bitter herbs to remember the bitterness of subjugation, of abuse, not just because it was so bad then, but to remind us that today we still have to stick up for these causes. We still have to make them ours because we know what it's like. We remember, we glorify in the fact that we come from slaves. All other nations, especially in ancient history, they would trace themselves back to gods and kings. Who do we trace ourselves back to? Slaves. Former slave in the house, look here. Are we proud of being slaves? Yeah. Not because we were slaves, but because it's crystallized in our mind's eye how we're supposed to live our lives and what Torah is supposed to do for it. And through that, we've changed the world. And the world, what they call Judeo-Christian ethics, or monotheism, which has given mankind back his dignity. Instead of a bunch of gods fighting with each other and human beings sort of sniveling, sacrificing their own children to the god of rain, otherwise there's going to be drought, and I'm going to sacrifice another child to the god of love, and I'll another one to the god of the harvest, and sacrifice, and for what? Because you're afraid of gods, and the gods themselves are petty. They fight with each other. They commit adultery with their own celestial wives. Along comes Judaism, and monotheism says, no, there's one God, and he's compassionate, and you're the reason for creation. You are as close to my image as I am. You're a reflection of my image. You're created b'tselem Elokim, in the image of God. And that's changed the world. As a matter of fact, the moral furniture that we live with, that's so standard to us, that moral furniture all comes from Judaism. It's amazing. Things that we think are just regular, like everyone values life, right? Doesn't everyone value life? Not true. The idea that life is valuable is a Judaic idea. It's a Judaic idea. In the olden days, besides child sacrifice, we had mentioned the Colosseum before. What do the Romans used to do? The Romans, they didn't have baseball or basketball. They had the Colosseum, and they had gladiators. And they would put human beings, slaves, in front of wild animals to watch them get ripped apart, all while plying the audience and the onlookers with meat and wine to keep down the masses. Let's keep them entertained. The bloodlust of let's see who's going to live, who's going to die. And we all know when two gladiators fought and one gladiator vanquished the other one's lying there beaten. And the one who is the victor, he's got his foot on the vanquished person's chest, and he looks up at the audience. Should I let him live or die? Live or die? And almost always the audience said, kill him. And so he would lop off his head. And once in a while, when the audience appreciated the good fight and they said, let him live, then he would turn to the Emperor Caligula, perhaps, and he would say, nah, loser, kill him. We don't no room for losers here. That was ancient Rome. If you were a girl born in Rome and you were the second girl in the family, your life was in mortal danger. They didn't want you alive. They used to leave their daughters on the rocks for the wolves. And if you were a Hindu and you were a male, for thousands of years, when the male would die, all of his wives, plural, all of his wives, very often a fraction of this old geezer's age, he could have wife after wife. When he died, he was burnt, and all of his wives were burnt together with him so that their ashes can float down the Ganges River together and be in the next world. If you were a pharaoh, your family and your slaves and many others were buried with you in the tomb. A claustrophobic starvation death. The value of life is a Jewish value. We can go very into this because other values, the value of family, the value of education, these are all Jewish values. They trace themselves back to Judaism. There are many books on the subject, most written by non-Jews. Gift of the Jews, History of the Jews by Paul Johnson, World Perfect by Spiro. Read up on it. You'll walk around with a sense of tremendous pride. Not that we're the strongest, although we are tenacious warriors. History does say that. We don't get credit for it, but we were. We're the only ones who fought Rome to a near standstill for many years. In Israel, you give us 70, 80 years, we're 6th, 7th most powerful country in the world. Right? We are tenacious, but that's not our pride. Our pride is not our desert shield or our desert storm or our iron dome. That's not our pride. You know what our pride is? Our pride is our morality. The fact that we're purple jacket people, we have a lot to teach the world. Now, there's a lot to be said about this, but I want to dip into mitzvot right now. So, if we're supposed to be the purple jacket people, it stands to reason that the way we're supposed to live our lives spreads the message of the ambassador. So therefore, we got this extra set of mitzvot, this extra set of commandments to allow us to be amazing enough to teach everyone. So if a person says to me, oh, I'm a good Jew, I don't kill, I don't steal, I say, okay, that's good that you don't kill and steal, but that would technically make you a good Christian also, because they also have those laws, or a good Muslim, or a good any religion. Every religion has those laws or a variation of those laws. The basic laws of morality, the world has adopted and absorbed. If a person says, I'm a good Jew because I don't kill, I don't steal, that's not uniquely Jewish. What makes us uniquely Jewish are the other mitzvot. The more ritual mitzvot that we think are just dogma, tradition, if I were, that kind of stuff, that's what makes us uniquely Jewish. And I'll give you an example of how this works. Well, you know, a running back takes the football and he runs. And running backs, like all the other players, they get drafted. And you can get drafted in the first round, the second round, third round, but the best players get drafted in the first round. And there was one of the players at the combine, when they wanted to see how fast he runs, and all the scouts are there from the different teams, he runs the 40-yard dash in 4.15. It's a crazy fast time, like almost record-breaking, 4.15. And he is chosen the very first pick in the draft as a running back. And the first day of training camp begins, and the coach, he's got all of the draftees going through cones and doing these exercises. And after a few minutes, this first round pick, this guy who runs the 4.15, he goes over to the coach and says, Coach, look, I get why these other draftees have to do these exercises. You know, I get it. Look, they got to practice. They got to get good. But you know why you picked me. You know why you drafted me. I'm the stud. I'm the stallion. I'm the one who could run the 40 and 4.15. Just give me the pigskin and let me run. Give me the football and let me take off. And the coach looks at this guy and he says, you arrogant so-and-so. Do you think that being in the NFL is just about running fast? No. The overt skill, yeah, you got to run fast. That's true. That is the overt skill. But if you want to be a professional, you want to be in the NFL, there's a whole bunch more you have to learn. You have to learn the playbook. You have to know how to block for the quarterback. You have to know how to do a flea flicker. You have to know how to do a fake handoff. You have to know how to toss back. You've got a lot to learn. Overt skill, got to run fast, no question. But you want to be a professional? Look at our playbook. Pound the pavement. Learn the exercises. Being a professional is a whole different ballgame. Judaism says, yeah, regular morality, don't kill, don't steal, everyone's got that. That's the overt skill. That's like the running fast. But you want to be a professional? You want to be so good as a people that you literally teach goodness by your actions. You define goodness. Well, then you need Torah. Now, how does this work? Each law in the Torah teaches a value, a moral concept. Each law teaches a value. That's a very important idea to understand. A lot of times when we look at Torah or Judaism, we think, okay, there is the stuff that everyone agrees with. You know, Reform, Orthodox, Conservative, doesn't make a difference. We know can't kill, can't steal, committing adultery, bad, honoring parents, good. That's the basic stuff. What about the ritual or things that look like ritual? Are those just, is that like we called it last week, is that busy work? Was God giving us busy work? We said last week, God wanted to give to mankind. And by giving, he gave us a mission. And through that mission, we earn the goodness that God wants to give us. So did he give us busy work? Is tefillin busy work? Is kosher busy work? We said, no, that's not the way it works. Every mitzvah targets a moral idea. Right now, there is this Roe v. Wade question coming up. Roe v. Wade, and everyone's screaming, yeah, no, yeah, no. What is the question really? So you could say the question really is, when does life begin? And the answer is no one knows. So then it's arbitrary. But it's a deeper question. The question is, who gets your mercy? Does the child or the mother? And I don't even have to answer it here. I'm just trying to give you the parameters of the question. Who gets the mercy? Who is worthy of your mercy? And what are the ramifications of it? In the same vein, when you have a murderer on death row, and this person wiped out a family, who gets your mercy? Is it the murderer, and you let him go after 15 years if he behaves in jail? So he can go around, even if he's never going to kill again, which we don't know. But he is now walking free while this family just lost their father, son, brother, grandfather. Okay, but who gets your mercy? Is it the guy? Or is it the family whose lives are irreparably changed and perhaps destroyed because this murderer was allowed out and free? Who gets your mercy? Who gets your cruelty? And every nation has that question. As a matter of fact, that's even the Israel question. Who's getting your mercy? Is it Hamas or the citizens of Israel? And what do they stand for? I don't even have to answer it. We need to understand what the question is. The question is, who gets your mercy? Who is deserving of your mercy? And, says the Torah, choose wisely. Because if you choose the wrong party, then you'll go down with that party as being accomplice to their wickedness. So whose side are you on? And who's the collateral damage? Who's getting your mercy? I'm saying it's a very deep question. Okay, let's pick some other examples of the morality behind mitzvot. There's an interesting mitzvah, and the mitzvah actually comes from this week's Torah portion. And if anything ever seemed like that's just a ritual, come on, this would be that one. What's the mitzvah? The mitzvah is you cannot wear a garment that is a combination of the materials wool and linen. So just to know, it's called shatnez. That's the name of the mitzvah. And we are very careful about now, when does it ever come up? So practically speaking, linen is a pretty rare fiber to make a garment out of. It's not a very practical fiber or material, and therefore most things you don't have to get checked for linen. Like nothing that I'm wearing is even a question. Here was the coat that I had today, a nice coat I got in Target. No problem with wool linen. It probably is polyester and polyester. No problem. But where does it become a problem? Usually becomes a problem in a suit. And the more expensive the suit, the bigger the problem. Because the thing that linen is used for is it's used as a stiffener. And often in more expensive suits, they'll put linen in the collar and maybe also in the bottom part of the jacket. So jackets of suits, actually I just bought a jacket, and it was a expensive jacket. It was a Versace. I'm not a very fancy person. I got it on sale. But it bought it, and I had a sneaking suspicion it's going to have shatnez, and sure enough, it had shatnez. And shatnez had to be taken out. You could take out shatnez, but then, it costs money. And every regular city, Jewish city that has a lot of Jews, have a shatnez laboratory, at least one. So why can't I wear wool and linen? Like that seems like such busy work mitzvah, right? Doesn't it? Wool and linen? So what if I told you that the idea behind wool and linen is there to solve the Middle East crisis? You look at me like, what? What does A have to do with B? So let's just understand. We're going deep into Judaism. It's so beautiful. So like many mitzvot, the law is based on a story that took place at some point in the book of Genesis. So very often, the laws in the last 4 books refer back to a story that happened in the first book. That's just a good, like sort of a cheat code to know. So you got to know the stories in Genesis. So when you read Exodus and Leviticus and Numbers and Deuteronomy, you'll be able to go back. So this is targeting a story that took place near the beginning. Adam and Eve had 2 children. They were called Cain and Abel, or in Hebrew, Cain and Hevel. Cain and Abel. And the story in the Torah goes that one day Cain says, I want to thank the Lord Almighty for giving me half of planet Earth, because remember, there was Adam and Eve and they just got 2 kids. So each kid owns half. Like, wow, thank you so much, God. I want to offer you something. I'm going to offer you something. And he used to, he was a farmer, and his crop of choice was flax. So after he harvested, he saw he had a few pieces of flax that they were just sort of wimpy. They just were like too short and too beat up to do anything with. So he gathered them together and built a little altar. And he said, God, from me to you, enjoy. It's all yours. And God looks down at these stalks of flax and says, thanks, but not interested. Well, Abel, or Hevel, in English, Abel, that's such a good idea. I'm going to do the same thing. Now, Abel, he was a shepherd, and he had lots of sheep. So he says, I want to offer something to God as well. So he takes his biggest, plumpest, fluffiest sheep, and he says, God, from me to you, enjoy the sheep. And a fire comes down from heaven, and it consumes the sheep. So God accepts Abel's sacrifice of this big sheep. Well, Cain is miffed. Cain is insulted. He turns to God and says, hello, I offer you my flax, you ignore it. He offers you a sheep and you accept it. So God says to Cain, Cain, do you think I need your flax? Do you think I need his sheep? I don't need any of it. I made all of it. It's all mine. Why do I ever accept anything from mankind? In English, it's called a sacrifice, but that's a mistranslation, as are so many things when they're anglicized. How do you say what they call a sacrifice? How do you say that in Hebrew? It's called a korban. The word korban comes from the word karov, which means to become close, to create a relationship. So God says, look, why do I ever accept anything from you guys? I don't need sheep. I don't need flax. But you want to offer something. That's very sweet. Last night, I came out, it was after Shabbat, and my youngest son, my 12-year-old, I meet him in the hallway, and he's got this cup of tea that he was in the middle of bringing me. And his tati, it's a pomegranate cranberry, and he put his little honey in it, and he just made me a nice tea. And it's a very sweet boy, and he does these kind of things, and it was yummy, it was delicious. Now, I didn't tell him, hey, the water that you used, the tea that you used, the honey you used, they're all mine. I bought them. I worked for a living, and I bought the tea. So you took my tea, you put it in my cup with my honey. I didn't say that. No. He's so sweet. I only felt love. Because what does he want? It's not about the tea. It's about the desire to create a relationship. That's really what the word korban means. Never means sacrifice. Sacrifice, like, gotta do it. I don't want to. I'm sacrificing. That's why it's such a bad translation. It means to create a relationship. So God says to Cain, you don't want to create a relationship because you know what you're doing? You give me your scraps. What am I, a dog under the table? Here, God, here's my leftover flax. He said, don't do me no favors. You want to be in a relationship, then do it like Cain, like Abel. Abel brought me something that was important to him. It's not the sheep, it's the idea. So at this point, Cain has a choice. We're going to call it the Cain choice. What should he do right now? Okay, option A, let me bring on this altar the biggest, plumpest, fluffiest flax that I could find in my warehouse. I'll bring that to God. I'm going to learn from Abel, and I'm going to do the same thing with flax. Or option B, kill off the competition. He's making me look bad. What did Cain do? Which choice did Cain make? Cain made choice B. Kill off the competition. So Cain kills Abel. Cain kills Abel, and God says to Cain, where's your brother? He says that famous line, am I my brother's keeper? And God says back, hello, I'm God. I saw everything. When he tried to hide from me, I see everything. And then Cain was banished, Abel was killed, and we became the children of a third child that was born from Adam and Eve, whose name was Shase, or Seth in English. We're all children of Seth, DNA-wise. But Abel murdered, Cain banished. Now, what was Cain's choice? So listen carefully. You're going to understand something very deep. The choice that Cain had is known in Hebrew as kinas sofrim tarba chachma, which means when I am jealous of somebody because they're doing something good, whether they're learning a musical instrument and I always wanted to, or they're learning a Spanish and I always wanted to know Spanish, or they're going on a diet and I know I could use a few pounds but I don't have the self-control, or they're doing Shabbat and I know I really want to but I just keep bailing because I would like to watch, I can't put down my phone for 24 hours. Whatever it is, I see the next person and I'm inspired by them, but I'm not inspired enough to make the meaningful change in my life. So I have the choice called the Cain choice. Either I can learn from them and draw inspiration and courage from them, or option B, let me kill off the competition. They'll never finish their diet. They'll gain back, in 2 weeks, they'll be the same as before. That Spanish, everyone's gonna know that they'll speak Spanish like an American. The accent's gonna be all wrong. Oh, they're saving money. Wait, the first time they see a Tesla, they're gonna blow it on the Tesla. Then they're probably gonna do an accident. And I know this guy. Oh, gonna keep Shabbat? Trust me, after 3 weeks, his friends are gonna wanna go out, then he'll bail. I gotta put him down. You know why I gotta put him down? Because that's how I defend myself. That's how I protect myself. If I can put him down, then I can feel secure. What does that have to do with wool and linen? Where does wool come from? Sheep. Where does linen come from? Flax. The first time in history that wool and linen combined in a story where the wool was from Abel and the flax, which made linen, was from Cain, bloodshed emerged. This was a reminder to us about the Cain choice. I have a question for you. Why, throughout history, since Israel was created, is there such animosity towards the Jewish state? What did Israel ever do to Iraq or to Algeria? Why the hatred? Why the hatred? There's not even we killed their God story like the Christians have. So what do you hate us for? Why the hatred in the Middle East? I always had a theory, but when the Arab Spring happened a few years ago, do you remember the Arab Spring, the uprising in Egypt? 2 million people in Tahrir Square? Okay, if you remember that. And there was this Arab Spring. The Arab Spring did not last long. It regressed. It was a huge missed opportunity, huge. And it taught other tyrants like Syria that uprisings are going to be short-lived. Or it taught Hezbollah that you could have your warehouse of explosive blow up in the Lebanese port and they're not going to throw you out. It was a big missed opportunity. But why did it ever happen? You know why? What was the hatred towards the Jewish state all about? There was a jealousy. New York Times, jealousy. And the jealousy is, why is it that in Israel, women have rights? Why is it that in Israel, people have the right to congregate? There's freedom of the press. There's freedom of religion. There's the freedom to grow and to innovate and to create. Why can't we be like them? Why can't we have those freedoms? And by the way, in certain Arab countries today, since the Abraham Accords, things have begun to shift, they've begun to change. But that was not the case For many years, the hatred was based on the jealousy. And they would turn to their dictators, their theocrats, and say, why can't we be like Israel? Do our women have to wear burqas that cover their face? The most austere kind of blue burqas where everything has to be covered? Forget about women going to school. Forget about any of that. And so these dictators had a question. They had a choice. They had the Cain choice. And the Cain choice is, I could either be like Israel and start opening up society so that technology could blossom and agriculture could blossom and medicine can blossom and you could defend yourself properly and there's the freedom to we could either be like Israel or we could choose option B. Let's kill off the competition because they're making us look bad. Wow. All of a sudden, a mitzvah that seems ritualistic, like don't wear wool and linen, is covering this topic of Cain and Abel, of the Cain choice. What do I do when the next party over, a friend or a neighbor or a neighboring country is growing? Do I have to vanquish them or can I aspire to be like them and grow myself? And that's just one mitzvah. And I could do this with mitzvah after mitzvah after mitzvah, and even customs. Even customs have a moral underpinning. There is a whole hyperlinking thing that goes on. Now, the best place to experience this kind of hyperlinking is called yeshiva. That's what we do, or seminary. That's when we realize that it's not Tevye the milkman and Fiddler on the Roof dancing around like a yacht saying, tradition, tradition, I don't know what I'm doing, but I do it because somehow tradition is important. Why? Why? What gave it its importance? Because it's a catchy song? How could it battle love? It can't. My tradition can say A, but if I love somebody who's not Jewish, so then I'll go with them, because tradition's not so strong. Tradition tells the Italians to eat their pasta and the French to enjoy their wine and us to eat our gefilte fish. Tradition, that's all it is. If we want our Judaism to be more meaningful than just ritual, that just seems like obsessive compulsive stuff, we have to learn the midot sheba mitzvot, the character underpinnings behind why mitzvot were given. I start off with ham. Why don't we eat pork? I'll finish with this. Is it because it's a dirty animal? No. You could scrub up a pork and it's nice and clean. As a matter of fact, biologically, a pig is very, very, very similar to a human being. That's why in heart transplants and other organs, it is possible to use a pig over other animals. There's a lot anatomically. So what makes them bad? Or are they bad? And what is it targeting? Shall I tell you what it's targeting? You'll never guess. Not eating pork is targeting politics. How politics? Well, in order for an animal to be kosher, it has to have two signs. It has to have split hooves, and it has to chew its cud. That means it has multiple stomachs, and it chews its cud. Two signs. So a goat is kosher. It chews its cud, split hooves. A horse is not kosher. A cow is kosher. A giraffe is kosher. I would love to have me some giraffe with some barbecue sauce. No, not really. Some have buffalo, it's kosher. Right? Lion, totally not kosher. Doesn't have either of the two. Now, the Torah says there is one animal in the world that has split hooves, but does not chew its cud. Only one. Only one animal has split hooves, doesn't chew its cud. And that is a pig. So if you think about it, a pig is like half kosher. It's more kosher than other animals that are not kosher at all because it has split hooves and doesn't chew its cud. But that's, of course, not true because it's not like it doesn't work halfway. It either has both or it doesn't. But what is unique about a pig is Out of the two signs, split hooves and shudar kad, which one could you notice right away when you're just looking at an animal on the outside? The hooves part, right? You don't know about chewing the cud unless you learn a little more about the anatomy of, or the digestive system of an animal. So a pig on the outside looks kosher, but on the inside, it does not chew its cud, so it's not kosher. And therefore, a pig became symbolic in Judaism of falsehood, of promising certain things, but on the inside having no intention to keep them. It's called, in Hebrew, the concept is called to be tocho kabaro. Your outside and your inside reflect each other. And a pig is unique because its outside looks kosher. As a matter of fact, a pig is one of the only animals that when it crouches down, instead of its hooves being tucked under its body, its hooves actually go forward like this, almost as if a pig is to say, hey, looky here, kosher animal in the house. That's politics. That's, wow, you're promising, but on the outside you look like the saint, but on the inside you have special interests in mind and you had no intention of keeping your promises. You're a liar. That's pig. And that's why when you want to call somebody fake in Yiddish, you would say, treif azoivi chazer. They're so not kosher. They're like a pig. Don't be fooled. So the idea of pork is the idea of tocha kabaro, on the being insincere, being on the outside one way, being the inside. This is fascinating stuff. I hope your eyes like, wow, you could do this with the whole Torah? Yes, you can. And it's fantastic. The main thing you should understand is you should be proud that your Judaism is there to make the world a better place. We are the purple jacket people. We do that through mitzvot. And it's not just don't kill, don't steals, but it's the nuance. It's the 613 very technical, very exacting, very symbolic concepts that allow us to be not just good, but the very definition of being able to teach goodness to the rest of the world. Thank you very much.